Welcome back to the Wheel Scene YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be looking at the Them Skates 901 because my pre-order has just arrived from Local Skates. It comes with a nice little tote bag which says Them Skates sports gear on it. Always handy to have a tote bag. It also comes with cool little key rings. Underrated, although I'm not entirely sure I appreciate the double XL t-shirt. I will have you know I am an XL, thank you very much. I don't know who fulfilled this order, whether it was Local or Them Skates, but I'm not f***ing impressed.
I like the roller skates.
Cheers. Fat shaming aside, they have arrived, they are shiny and new. I feel like the Local pre-orders took a little bit longer than if you got them direct. Maybe it didn't, but I know quite a few people who had them in the UK last week. However, they are here and now I can fully fanboy out on them as soon as I get this box out the way. And by the power of editing, look at this professional setup. I've got my glass of water, got my laptop, I've got the skate held up, I've got a little bit of dirt on my counter because I didn't clean it. So, the Them 901. From a distance, I wouldn't say this looks notably different from a Them 909. I think if you saw someone skating this in footage or at a skate park, and you weren't up close and personal with them, you wouldn't actually know it's any different to the 909. But the 901 does have a few different features. So for example, the lacing system is slightly different. It's got an extra little bit here, which makes it look aesthetically different from the 909. I would also say, because of the sole plate, the look down is slightly different to the 909. With the 909, the sole plate followed the shape of the boot, whereas with the 901, you can definitely see it sticking out at the bottom. Now, I've seen John Julio compare the two sole plates and these are definitely wider, but I wouldn't say they are that wider. I would just say the shape is a little bit different. I think it's only a couple of millimeters wider. They've added a little bit on the negative space and a little bit on the sole plate. I think the main difference is they've squared off the bottom of the sole plate here. So it's not quite as following the line of the boot, which kind of adds that little extra bit of chunk. And I was really keen to try these for that reason. Also, the backslide groove has now got a kind of rounded part on the side, but if you actually look at the bottom, it's still got the kind of triangle shape that the 909 sole plate had. And the other difference with this is it comes with the new Them Skate street frame, which this is an anti-rocker setup and comes with, I think these are 47mm wheels. They are 47mm grind wheels, and I imagine they're 58s on the outside. They are 58s on the outside. So aesthetically, the main differences between the 901 and the 909 is, first off, the material is shinier. I think with the 909 it was a little bit more matte, and apparently this is cheaper to produce. It comes with a bigger sole plate and it comes with the new street frame. There is an argument that you didn't actually need an entirely new skate for that, because you could just take the sole plate and the frame and shove it on a 909. I've had so many pairs of Them skates. I have skated the 908s, the U1s, the 909s, and I really like this skate. It fit my foot really well, it was light, it performed well, and I skated them for a number of years. The reason I stopped skating these is I just had a few niggles with them that over time just started to bother me more and more, to the point where I went looking to try other skates. One of the issues was the hardware. The cuff bolts kept popping out and I found that quite annoying and just constantly having to tighten them. I'm also not a fan of the bridge hardware on these skates. I don't think it's strong enough. I think it's quite temperamental. Dem skates is one of the few skates I know that you can over tighten and destroy the bridge hardware that connects the sole plate to the boot, which I just find really annoying. I think it's a bit idiotic that you can, with most skates, you would tighten it to the point where it just can't tighten anymore. But with them skates, it's really easy to over tighten it. And as a result, every time I was buying a new pair of 909s, I was stockpiling the bridge hardware in case it came loose and I accidentally over tightened it and rounded a bolt, or over tightened it and it just stopped tightening and the sole plate started rattling. Another issue I had with them skates was I just got a bit fed up with the sole plate life. It just didn't seem to last very long. I skate a lot of ledges and a lot of rough ledges, and I was finding myself going through sole plates really quickly, which can be quite expensive if you're buying like several pairs of sole plates every year. Even if the skates are like surviving on and on, if you're constantly replacing one of the most expensive pieces of hardware on the skate, it adds up really quickly. In terms of sizing, I've went for the size medium. I am a 285 Mondo, size 10 UK shoe. I have always skated the size medium Dem skates from the very beginning up until now, and it fits my foot really well. I don't really like a performance fit. I don't like it when the skate is so tight that it's uncomfortable. I've got friends who will skate skates that give them cramps, give them toe bashes, and like they either have to take them off every hour or they can't skate in them very long. I don't like that. I want a little bit of room, just enough room to wiggle the toes, and so that it's comfortable that I can wear it for hours on end. I don't want to have to take my skate off because my foot is hurting. With the medium, I have found that with the stock liner, it's a little bit too tight, it's a little bit uncomfortable. In order to skate this particular skate, although we're now on the 901, so slightly different skate, but same concept, I've always had to use a thinner liner. With the Them liner, I do think, and this isn't just a criticism of them, this is a criticism of most stock liners, I think it looks quite cheap, I think it feels quite cheap, and it takes up quite a lot of room in the shell. So if you're like me, you're a 285 Mondo and you're trying to fit in the size medium, I would recommend buying premium liners, thinner liners, because life's too short to skate stock liners. If you can afford premium liners like a MyFit Second Skin or an Intuition Premium or an Intuition V2 that I tend to juggle between, your feet will thank you in the long run, and it's more expensive up front, but my last pair of Intuitions lasted over 2 years. The current pair of premiums I've got have lasted over a year, so I just don't see any need in skating this liner. So for that reason, and by the power of editing, we now have a premium liner in there, an Intuition premium liner, and thankfully for me, it is also black. So I've now got an all black full goth setup, which suits my tendencies very nicely. I would like it if the liner didn't stick up so high outside the shell, but I skate them in my trousers over the cuff anyway, so it's not going to make that much difference to me. One thing I will say though is, if you're going to put premium liners in this, I will make a recommendation, and that is investing in this masking tape. And that is because inside the boot, the cuff bolt receivers stick out on the inside. The actual cuff screw sticks out inside the shell. That kind of makes sense. And it's quite sharp. And in my experience with plenty of them skates that I've owned, it tears the crap out of the outside of your liner and makes it look really ugly and like it's been attacked by a pair of scissors. So if you're going to buy them skates, the first thing I would do is make sure you tape up the cuff bolt receivers on the inside of the shell to protect your liner. If you've got a premium liner, whether it's MyFit, Intuition, Rain, Rollerblade, whatever, You want to protect it, you want to make sure it lasts as long as possible, looks pretty, maintains its integrity as long as possible, so tape it up on the inside. Another thing I would advise investing in, if you have them skates or you're thinking of buying them, is blue Loctite. This is Loctite 248. You can either get it in liquid form or this comes in a stick. And what you want to do is take the cuff bolt off, give a healthy dose of this on it, on each side, screw it back in and leave it for 24 hours. Do not skate it before then. If you skate it before then, it won't work and they'll come loose. One of the biggest criticisms I have of them skates is cuff bolts getting lost. Again, I also stockpile those and keep them in a bag just because it's the quickest way to ruin a session, just looking for this tiny screw that you're never going to find at a street spot or a skate park, or you realise you actually lost it at the spot before and you just didn't notice. So 2 recommendations: get some masking tape, put it over the bolts on the inside, get some blue Loctite, put it on. I would recommend putting it on the cuff bolts and on the UFS bolts because these are kind of notorious for that. Next thing I want to talk about is the price. I pre-ordered these and they were £220. Now, John Julio was on the Dawn podcast with Ben Magaziner and he said that he wants the 901 to be a budget skate, but I would say that £220 is definitely on the higher end of the scale when it comes to a budget skate. There's a lot of skates that you can get for under £220 that can definitely compete with this. And I'm just going to do a quick check on Loco's website to see, because my mind is absolute mush and I can't remember stuff. But yeah, just taking a quick look, you can get a Razor's Shift for £189, a Razor's Cult Level 1 for £159, a Razor's Cult, the legitimate one, for £174, and a Razor's Cream for £169. So that's quite a lot of budget skates and good quality budget skates that you can get for not only under £220, but a lot under £220. I'm also pretty certain the Rosses M12, the basic one, yeah, you can get a basic Rosses M12 on the Loco site for £139. That's like £80 cheaper than this, and the Rosses M12 is tried and tested. Like, it's a skate people love if you can fit into it. You have to have quite a narrow foot. I'm also curious to know if the USD Sway is notably cheaper as well. Yeah, again, the USD Sway, you can get a USD Sway team skate for £179. So that's over £40 cheaper than this. So I understand that there's a lot of excitement around them skates. It's a very popular brand and rightly so. They've done incredible marketing. They've got a really good team. They put out so much media and really focus on it and do a great job. But in terms of the price, I wouldn't say £220 is a lot of money for skates, especially when you compare it to other sports like skiing, snowboarding, mountain biking, etc. But if you're going to say this is a budget skate, there's a lot of other skates in that corner of the market, and there's a lot of other skates that are significantly cheaper. So it's a good thing that there's a lot of hype behind this brand, because otherwise it would suggest that they would struggle in terms of competing with the other brands from a price point perspective alone. But everyone knows that them skates are good quality skates. They've got a solid reputation, and rightfully so. And John Julio being the owner also helps, because he's a legend in the sport and has been around since the mid/early 90s. I've rabbited on enough about these skates. I am really excited to try a couple of things. I'm really excited about the sole plate and the slightly different backslide groove. Also, it's got a little bit more space, so hopefully that'll be more forgiving for someone like me who isn't always that accurate. I'm also really looking forward to trying this frame. I've not skated anti-rocker in so long, or if you're American, anti-rocker. So I'm curious to know how that will go, if I'll hate it or if I'll enjoy how easy grinds are. And To be honest, with how good flat frames are these days, I don't really notice any wheel bite, so I can't imagine I'm going to find that many benefits from skating this anti-rocker, but I'm keen to try it fully stock, apart from the liners, because I just refuse to skate stock liners. So the next footage you're going to see is of me attempting to skate these at a ledge spot. That one hurt. So just as a quick session in the Them 901, it was going well until I decided to do a zero spin porn star and Control Alt Delete my back. And it went into shutdown, but the sensation is starting to come back and I might survive for another day. Initial impressions were not to do with the skates, it was to do with the setup. So because it's riding anti-rocker, and it's got a square profile, I was noticing it was feeling very train tracky, and at this spot there's a lot of grooves between the slabs because it's tiled, and there's a lot of kind of deep, just deep grooves basically to catch yourself out on. And I was noticing when I was skating up to tricks or I was rolling away from tricks, I would get caught out quite a lot. Also noticed with the frame, because it's got quite thick sidewalls, that there were quite a few times where I was pushing off and I could feel it sliding out because I was catching the plastic of the frame. So that is something to watch out for, but with all thick frame walls, it will wear down eventually from wear and tear. I was surprised that the speed of how they slide, I was expecting them to be fresh setup anti-rocker, slide really fast on groove tricks, but because these are quite rough ledges and this is obviously a very hard plastic, it doesn't slide as well as previous frames I've been using. So I've just come off using the FR Street frame, the FR Wish Street frame, which is a softer plastic, and the softer plastic definitely slides better on rough ledges than this harder plastic. Another thing I noticed, and it's something that I forgot about them skates, it's that they feel quite clacky and plasticky, which I know sounds a bit weird for a plastic skate, but I think they sound more plasticky than most. When you're skating around, and especially if it's rough surfaces, I'm just very much aware of how hollow it sounds because it doesn't have like a dampener sheet between the boot and the sole plate like some other skates that I've used recently, like the Mesmer, like the Icon, and I feel like that contributes to that kind of hollow sound, which I really don't like. And weirdly, something is sounding quite rattly, which I'm attributing to the anti-rocker setup, but it's only on the left skate, it's not on the right skate, or it's not as much on the right skate. And I've checked all the bolts, I've tightened everything, so maybe I'll just have to live with it, or maybe it's just this spot is quite uneven ground, I don't know. Listen to that rattle. Only the left skate. Very strange. In terms of the fit, some people have commented that they're not as wide as the 909, but I didn't notice that at all. I haven't noticed any difference at all in terms of the width of the skate. I am aware that my toe is pressing against the edge of the shell, so the size medium is definitely as big as I could go. I could never go down to a medium, and I think I'm noticing that it's pressing against the shell more because it's a harder plastic. I think with the 909 being slightly softer and more forgiving, I didn't notice it as much, but it's not causing me any discomfort yet. I'm just aware of it. I can kind of just feel my front toes gently tapping against the front of the shell. So, like I said, if you're a 285 Mondo, the medium's about as small as I would recommend. In terms of the flex, they're definitely stiffer than the 909s I've skated, but I still wouldn't say it's an overly stiff skate. It's really easy to get boot down on Royales and Unities, really easy to get flex on top sides. So it's definitely not anywhere near one of the stiffest skates in the market. It's not as stiff as a USD Sway or the Icon ACT, which I've been skating both of recently. But I would still say there is quite a decent amount of flex. And just to kind of illustrate that point, it's really easy to get boot down, like with pretty much no bending, slight bending of the leg. So I don't think these are going to be giving anyone trouble with Royales. It's quite funny that they've kind of gone from the opposite end of the spectrum. With the 908, it was incredibly floppy, so floppy to the point where I would argue that it was slightly dangerous. And then they've come to this, which is definitely a lot firmer and more supportive. But again, I wouldn't say it was anywhere near one of the stiffest skates on the market. But so far, overall impressions are positive. I'm glad I've put the Intuition Premiums in there because it just freed up so much space. They don't feel as tight, claustrophobic and uncomfortable as they did with the stock liner. Cannot stress enough, invest in premium liners. You will not regret it. I put it off for years. I thought it was just a gimmick. When everyone started skating Intuitions, I was like, no, you guys are just idiots spending £170 on liners. Then I got a pair. They've lasted years and I've kept reinvesting ever since. So cannot stress that enough. Nothing's come loose yet, like the cuff bolts or any of the other bolts. So that is good. I've not lost anything yet, which was usually the curse with them skates. I'm going to try and hit up a couple more bigger ledges now and just get a few more tricks before it gets any darker. And then we'll get out of here. So just get wrapped up, managed to get a few more tricks at the bigger ledges, not have any falls, always a bonus. Overall impressions of the 901 are generally positive. They basically just feel like a 909, a slightly stiffer 909, not a notably stiffer 909, slightly stiffer. In terms of the fit, I can't really tell the difference. Maybe other people will be able to, but I'm in the very top end of a medium shell and this fits me absolutely fine. Like I said, maybe my toes are touching a little bit more, or maybe I'm just imagining that, or maybe it is because of the harder plastic. I don't know, but it's not causing any discomfort. I like the way they look. I like the way they fit. My biggest complaints are just due to the anti-rocker setup. I really, really hate these wheels, but then I've never been a fan of square profile wheels. I am just getting caught out all the time on turns and I keep trying to carve and it just doesn't want to do it, or I'll catch a stone on the way up or on the way off, and it just seems to be happening a lot more than it does on round profile wheels or on flat setup. Another thing is, I'm not really a fan of this frame either. It's got a nice broken in groove, so I definitely don't feel like you have to wear it in. I like that it's got the kind of beveled edge at the side, so it feels like you've got a slightly worn in groove, which is good, but I just don't like how hard it is. I can feel every join on the ledge, and I'm very acutely aware of how rough these ledges are, and the only other frame it felt that way on was the Entente Diridari, which is one of the stiffest frames on the market, and the Icon AG60 carbon frame, which again is one of the stiffest frames on the market. It gives me that same feeling, which some people like, but I'm just not really that big of a fan. I'm going to skate them like these for another session, just see how I get on with them, and then I think I'm going to swap these out and put on some white AG60 frames that I've got and some 58mm dead wheels flat. I think I'll definitely enjoy these a lot more once I stop skating anti-rocker. Going back to this after years of skating flat, it just kills rolling around for me. I definitely prefer rolling around on flat rocker. But overall, generally positive experience. Like I said, the skate does sound a bit clacky, which I don't really like. It sounds a bit cheap, but that would easily be solved by just putting a thin bit of foam between the sole plate and the boot. It's an easy enough fix if I can be bothered enough to do it. Other than that, I'm having no issues. Do I notice the sole plate being bigger? Not really. I wouldn't say it feels that much different. It's obviously a little bit more generous, but how much do you really notice that? I am noticing the backslide groove though. I like the nice curved backslide groove. It locks in really quickly, whereas I felt like in previous 909s that I skated, I had to kind of wear that backslide groove in before it feels comfortable. But off the bat, it feels pretty good. So initial impressions, so far so good, but definite room for improvement. Let me know what you think in the comments, if you agree with what I'm saying, if you disagree, if you have a pair of 901s. I always want to say 909s. Why did they have to call it 901s? Let me know if you've got a pair of 901s and your thoughts on them. And yeah, speak to you guys soon.